Okay, so I guess I'm introing. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Remind podcast. My name's David Masterton, and I'm joined by the wonderful Dr. Ashleigh Moreland. And today, I want to say we're following up on last week's, but it might actually, it has a link to it, but it's really, we're going to be talking about release to receive, not receive, then release. Which is all about, so last week we talked about JOMO, and for those playing the home game, you would have realised we're talking about the joy of missing out versus the fear of missing out. And this is, by extension, that whole thing of when you miss out on something, i.e. release it, it opens up the possibility for you to receive it. Now, in this discussion, we're talking about why do we have to release to receive versus receive it so you can then release it. Why can't you have the certain thing come in to get rid of it? Get the replacement before you get rid of the old one. In this life, you have to get rid of the old one and then know the new one comes in.
Trust and faith.
Great episode. All right.
Yeah, see you later, guys.
But it's so true, isn't it?
It is.
It's true.
So true. And the reason that this kind of came up is because I said, oh, wow. The thing that really, really started bubbling to the surface for me after the whole conversation on FOMO and JOMO was, you know, when I think about me in the past before I had elevated and evolved and really, really grown spiritually, I used to be someone who was severely attached. I was severely anxious, and I was massively attached to outcomes, to people, to possessions, and all this sort of stuff. And the idea of outgrowing a friendship or there being distance between myself and some friends, as an example, would feel suffocating to me. And I would want to claw at the friendship to try and salvage it and hold on to it because I was so afraid of losing it. There was a fear of missing out, a FOMO, that really mirrored, I guess, probably my insecurities around not being worthy. And so that fear of loss, one of the interesting things is someone spoke into my life years ago saying, Ash, people are in your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And you've got to be able to understand that there are probably less than a handful of people who are truly lifetime people in your life. And everyone else is either there to support you through a season or to navigate a season with you, or they're in your life to teach you a lesson, to serve a purpose, to whatever. They're there for a reason. And once their reason is done, they don't need to stick around. They've done their job and it's okay for them to leave.
Absolutely.
So that was an interesting concept logically, and it took years for it to really sort of slowly sink down. I'm sort of imagining the filter coffee, just how slow it is. It drips through the filter. Well,
the drippolator.
It dripped through the filter of my mind and my body. And now I think that I probably possess an uncanny ability to release, knowing and trusting in full faith that what is for me is for me and what's not for me is not for me. And I can be grateful for the purpose that people served in my life and grateful for the season that I had something. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about a person or a car. I can be grateful for the season and feel so at peace with that season ending, knowing that the next season's going to be bloody awesome. But it wasn't always like that.
Oh, well, and look, same for me. Again, I think you and I share a very similar anxious attachment style when we're not, if we in our wounded state, it's very much anxious. As opposed to avoidant. And so, yes, there's that sort of sense of you got to hold on to it. You got to over nurture it. You got to get that constant feedback. You got to constantly know it's there. Marco Polo, sewn up, boing, 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 all of those things. But yeah, when it comes to, I suppose we're really talking about people and relationships here.
Yeah.
Like letting go of inanimate objects. Yes, I mean, me, absolute car lover. However, I used to love cars more than I love people, but that was, from what I understand now, a wounding, because a car can't really hurt me. It can disappoint me when it breaks, but everything's replaceable on that car.
Yeah.
To a certain extent. But, so it can't really disappoint me. I can drive fast in it. I can do all these things. It can be a representation of how I feel and how I want to represent myself, because every car has a different feel to those like me who sort of judge people on their cars. But mostly it's about relationships. And I love this thing about especially seasons, because you've got people that come in and out of your life. Sometimes you think they're going to be around forever and things are great, and it just doesn't happen that way. And to be able to release them and still be grateful for them and actually still be able to go, the world is a better place because of this person.
Yeah.
But also know that they're on your journey and look back on all the great things. You can still mourn the fact that you don't share the same things anymore. But all in all, life goes on. But it's like, wouldn't it be really nice if instead of having to mourn that person before they left, a new person came in, because that person was still going anyway? Wouldn't that be awesome? Because just overlap. What's the problem, universe?
I feel like I used to do that. Now this is really vulnerable in relationships. I remember saying to a therapist once, I'm like, does everyone do this, or is it just me? Like I genuinely didn't know, because it was a pattern I had always had in my life, where I always felt like I had a backup plan. And what I mean by a backup plan is like, if I was in a relationship with someone, I would be committed and I would be loyal in the relationship, but I would always still have half an eye, just having an awareness, always, I guess, kind of keeping someone close enough that if anything happened to that relationship, that I've kind of got someone as a backup. I've kind of already got someone who was close enough that there was like, right? It's super dysfunctional, but it never crossed the line as being inappropriate as such. But I look back. Not physically.
Emotionally, there might have been something from your side anyway to go, if something happens, I'm beelining. I'm just...
Yeah, essentially, I had in my mind mentally decided that they were a worthy candidate, and that's who I would be with if anything happened here, right?
Wow.
And it was so, I remember I was living in Bathurst at the time, and I remember raising this with the psychologist that I was seeing at the time, and I was like, does everyone do this, or is this just me? And that was kind of when I realized like that this was actually not a normal thing, and that even though lots of people do that, I have learned in my own work that was definitely a wounding thing for me, and that I didn't want to let anything go until I knew that I was going to be okay and not have to be alone, essentially. And so I was almost never single. I if one relationship ended, it would not be very long before I had, secured someone else or locked someone else down in sort of such a sense. And I remember saying to my husband, which probably sounded really weird to him, but to me, and knowing my history and my background, I was like, this is the first time in my entire life I've never had a backup plan. Like, there is not a single other person that I look at in the world and assess them for whether or not I would want to date them or be with them, or if they would be a good
you've got an empty bench.
I am yes, exactly. And it's so funny because I observe the same thing, like not exactly the same, not in terms of people being replaceable almost, But it's funny because I find that my husband does this with cars and properties. He'll
Gotcha.
always almost be like, well, if we don't get that one, this would be a great option. And it's almost like this concept of keeping your options open, because if you have something that you've already sussed out and it's a very almost like an easy, smooth transition, then the rest of it just falls away. And it's, yeah, like a self-preservation mechanism. It's so interesting. And I think it's like a really big healing journey to feel safe, suspended in that interim, in that I haven't got anyone as backup plan. And I feel very vulnerable because I may have to release, or maybe the universe, God will release me in some way I'm not expecting. Maybe, anything could happen. Anything could happen to my husband or me for that matter. But not having a backup plan leaves me very vulnerable to that. But the only way that I can feel safe in not having a backup plan is having faith that God has a plan that I don't have. So
yeah, look, 100%. And I've got to say, because we've actually recorded this in the past, but today marks my 3 years of being solo.
Yeah.
And when I left my last marriage, I had all of these intentions. I'll give it a couple of months, 6 months, 1 year tops, and I'll find someone.
Mm-hmm.
I remember saying to my best mate at the time, I reckon, I'm just gonna be me. He's like, don't rush into anything. I go, chances are you're gonna roll your eyes at me at some time soon. Even sort of pre-warned him. And so, but yeah, now it's 3 years and okay, I hope to find something soon, but if it takes another 3 years, so be it. Like, okay, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But the thing that I really want to come back to is that I had a bit of a why me, a little bit of a f*** you universe, right?
Yeah.
Why do I have to give up all of this shit to receive something? Right? Why is it I have to empty the warehouse first before anything new comes in? Why do you keep on testing me? Why? And you can sort of tell I was in a bit of a, having a why me moment.
Yeah.
And I let myself have that moment to express the emotion. So I think that's really important. Everything we talk about, and I know there's a side tangent coming up, everything we talk about talks about the heal, grounded up piece and all of that. So yes, you need to have that. But if you think that you have to suppress yourself from coming out and having a f*** you moment, no. You're allowed to express that emotion to release it.
Mm-hmm. And we have episodes on that. Go and have a look at the emotional orgasm episode.
Absolutely. So after I had that, I genuinely sort of went, I really would like to know, why do we have to release before we receive? Why can't we just receive or have our backup plan ready? Because that would make this so much easier. And it came back, the message was faith, belief. If you knew what was coming, then you're not actually leaning into that faith. You're not leaning into your intuition. You're using your head.
Yeah. And
then what then came afterwards was, David, stop thinking about it like a warehouse. So you have to empty your warehouse to put something in, because a warehouse can have stuff going all the time.
Yeah.
Imagine you are a cup of juice, right? You were born a cup of juice. Lovely, sweet, nectar, all of those type of things. However, over time with your trauma, your juice has turned into, say, a fermented yuckiness, right? And then after that, with extra trauma, it's turned into like this disgusting vinegar, right? Now, the healing is you have to get that out of your vessel. And let's just say, David, you've decided you've had enough, and you've taken your cup of juice, which has turned into a fermented mess and then into vinegar, and you've got like to 3/4. By the way, David, well done for getting this far. That is amazing. It was brutal, but you've managed to get it out. Now you want me to pour all the brand new fresh juice, your healed, back in to the vessel? Yes, please. Would you still drink it if you had 1/4 of your vessel, or we'll call it a cup, full of this vinegar, disgusting mess, even though it's only 1/4, and you fill the rest up with brand new, lovely juice, would you still drink it? And then to me, it's all like, okay, that makes sense, because it doesn't matter how much is in there. Whatever's left in the vessel is going to taint all the good stuff that's going to come in. It's not the other way around. And so at that point, I then realized, or had the acknowledgement, that to be able to release first to then receive is to do it based on belief and faith and following your intuition. And the reason why is because if you don't get rid of all of it, there's a potential that you're going to taint the new stuff that's coming in.
Mm.
And then you know what? The person that was having the tanty, which was the David up here in the brain, got it. Okay, I can relate to that now.
Yeah.
As opposed to having the why me, because the intuitive David knew it. He didn't know the academia around it. He just knew the feeling of it is what it is. But then from there, I got the logical explanation. Now, obviously, I'm oversimplifying, and there's other people who could pick it apart and go, but the healing journey involves this. Yes, absolutely. All of that. Yes, there's winds, and then there's valleys and mountains, and there's all of that. But in this particular moment, when we're talking
that's
about
what you needed.
Release before receive, that's the reason why.
Yeah. It's so interesting because I really feel that we are intimately known, and there's stuff that comes through revelation for you that if I got that, it wouldn't have made sense to me. It wouldn't have changed my life because I'm not you. And then there are things that come through to me that if anyone else got it, they wouldn't get the reference. They wouldn't get that because they don't have the context or the nuance and the history, and they don't have those associations, and they're not me. And so it wouldn't make sense to them. But so that's the first thing that just, I was like, man, it is so beautiful. But how that came up for me was with the concept of, I was traveling this year. We went away for 5 weeks. We stayed in hotels and had a buffet breakfast, a buffet meal every day. And
talk about fear of missing out.
Yes, right.
No drama.
Gained 5 kilos.
No missing out here. You got to finish.
Yeah, no miss. That's right. How do you avoid FOMO? You just don't miss out.
Well, you can eat buffet.
There's no fear of missing out if I just eat a bit of everything.
Almost lost my drink there, but yes.
But this is how God kind of showed me this, right? So I was at this buffet and I was like, oh my gosh, has anyone else ever noticed that like the really expensive stuff is always at the end of the buffet? Like all of your seafood and all of the really nice cuts of meat and all of that, it's always at the end of the buffet, and it works off the fatal flaw of humans and their FOMO. And so they grab their plate, they go to the front of the line, and they start putting the stuff on the plate. But by the time you get to the end of the line and you get to the really good stuff, your plate's full. And
again, that's the psychology around, and that's why we have a line and you start here, and that's why the plate's over there.
Yeah.
It's to signal start there and go that way.
Yeah.
As opposed to, by the way, the seafood section's over here and that thing's there. And the plates are in the middle. Or that's why they have a salad bar. Put the plates next to a salad bar.
Totally. And so there's all these things at play. But the thing that did for me was like, I think that I could look at the plate, which hypothetically is my life. It's my business, my relationship, my family, my home. I could look at life metaphorically as this plate. And God's going, I've got something so much better for you. But your plate is full. And this has kind of been the season that I've been in going, I want to give you the top of the top seafood platter.
Yep.
And I'd go, don't like seafood, but thanks.
No, I'm gonna have my garlic bread. I'm gonna have my toast because that was right at the start. I'm going because my head's gone.
Croutons.
My head's gonna go nuts over this. My mouth's watering already. Go away. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's this been like, I think for me, my faith journey has been so anchored in learning to trust that the universal plan for my life, the divine blueprint and plan for my life is so much better than the plate I'm loading up with the crap at the front of the line, right? So being able to walk past some of those things that look pretty yummy.
Well, I call it a recon lap. You need to do a recon lap first. You pick up your plate and you quickly do a recon lap.
That is not called faith. That's called strategy.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think like that's just been such a blessing for me in my life to just know that. And this is the other way. I recently had a conversation with a lady from Humans of Purpose. It's amazing, like non-for-profit who supports people in domestic violence.
Great.
Or escaping domestic violence. And anyway, we're having this amazing conversation, and it was so profound. And I was saying like, I've had this realization that for me, FOMO feels like going fishing and then you catch a fish, but because you've caught it and the opportunity is there, you then have to go and deal with the fish and scale the fish and fillet the fish and deal with it, because otherwise it'll go off. It'll go bad. You'll miss out on it. And I said, where I'm kind of sitting now is I almost feel like I'm walking down a corridor and the opportunities are doors that are opening off that corridor. And some of those doors go into rooms that are really appealing. And I go in, I'm like, this is an awesome room. Other doors open to a room that I'm like, no, that's nothing. I don't really want to go in there. That's okay. But the point is that there's opportunities and there's options, but I'm learning to feel safe in letting the opportunities pass by, knowing that the ones that are for me will be for me. And not attaching myself to those opportunities, fearing the loss of them. And she said to me, she goes, do you know something remarkable is that when eagles circle their prey, there's been slow motion footage that shows that, let's say, for example, the eagle is circling around a salmon and it's about to dive and catch its salmon. She goes, there is slow motion footage that shows that the salmon isn't the victim to the eagle. The salmon actually leaps out of the water as if to offer itself to the eagle. And that's spiritual sustainability.
Oh.
And she said, you've got to learn to trust that the right opportunities will leap out of the water for you. And that's the faith journey. That's faith and surrender and trust in knowing that just because there's a nice big juicy crouton, I don't know, not the croutons should be juicy.
We're going to go with buttery toast.
Just because there's a nice, golden buttery, I don't know, piece of toast there, and it looks appealing and it's appealing to the senses, does not mean to say that it is the thing that is right for you. And I loved that. It was such a helpful and healthy conversation to go, the things that are right for you, that opportunity that is right for you, that will just leap out and present itself to you. The doors that are right for you, they will just swing open like a gust of wind has flown through. The doors that are not for us, slam them shut and learning to let go.
we're up against them, rattling at the door, rattling at the handle, thumping our shoulder up against it, trying to get it open. And I really do love that analogy that you made about the hallway and the doors, because let's just say for some reason you walk into a room and it kind of feels okay and your head's going, but look, you've got all the stuff that you need here. You're okay. You're kind of safe. And then your gut's going.
Yeah.
You can't be in two rooms at one time.
Yeah.
So the analogy of releasing before you receive is you got to walk out of one room before you walk into another. It's physically impossible.
Yes.
If we had to use the
be in two
constraints
rooms
of
at
this sort of quantum reality, well, not quantum, but this reality that we're in, that it's really one place, one time.
Yeah.
Quantum means a lot more, but in this, it's like you got to walk out of that room before walking into another.
Yes.
It's not like the room appears. Like, so, I mean, and I guess it's that thing, release to receive, and you release because you have faith that you're going to receive.
Yeah.
Or delusion. And again, delusion can be somewhat negative when people sort of like, when it's grounded in ego, but delusion grounded in faith, you know, I love that delulu.
You love yourself, Tim Delulu. You've reached peak Delulu levels.
Yeah, yep. It's hard to breathe up here.
It's so thick I can taste it. Like your juicy croissants.
Well, now we've gone to croissants. So
croutons.
Croutons. Toast.
I think
croissants.
it's fair to say we are delusional right now.
I think you've had way too much gluten, Ashleigh. And
interesting fact about gluten. I remember being at a research seminar once, and someone was saying that the cognitive deficit effect of eating gluten for someone who is gluten intolerant or celiac is the equivalent to a blood alcohol reading of 0.08.
0.08. Oh, okay. Jeez, that's over the actual like driving.
Over the limit.
Yeah.
And
Damn.
so, isn't that crazy? I'm sorry, Your Honor, I didn't have alcohol. I just had.
Could you imagine the police
juicy
coming?
Crouton.
Could you imagine the police coming up to you? Have you had anything to eat today? I only had 2 slices of toast in the first hour. 1 slice of toast every hour afterwards. Sorry, mate, you're over. Jump out of the car for me, please.
All of a sudden, I sit in cafes and hear some of the terrible conversations people have, and I'm like, oh, it's the gluten.
I mean, we're not demonising gluten here. It's just like, I'm going to go grab me a nice sandwich. All right, guys.
It's been nice to share a belly laugh with you.
Yes. An unhurting, unbloated, we'll say, carburetted belly.
Yes.
All right. Till next week, guys. Like, subscribe. Let us know what you think about the episode. Give us some ideas about what you'd like us to talk about. And we'll catch you next week.
Take
Bye-bye.
care, guys. Bye.